Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast.
Listen, do what you gotta do to keep us around, okay? Welcome to episode 9 of Off the Cuff. I'm Matt Butler.
And I'm Darren Chohan. Today, we're shifting gears. We had talked a lot about estate litigation recently and wills and estates, and gave the viewers and listeners information about what to do when they're found in those situations.
Yep.
We've spent a lot of time on family law because we do that and enjoy it very much.
Very much.
But today I'm wearing a different hat. And today we're going to talk about personal injury litigation and more specifically, what to do when you get into a car accident.
Now we have a very special guest today, or someone who thinks himself is very special, Darren Chohan.
Thanks for having me on the show, Matt. I appreciate it.
Well, welcome to your own show. So, Darren, along with the family law litigation, you do practice civil litigation. So, tell us a bit about what you do in that sphere.
So, litigation, and in previous episodes, I've talked about being a barrister, and so I'm a barrister through and through. I do family litigation and civil litigation, and in my civil litigation practice, I do mostly personal injury work, and I do a little bit of commercial litigation. So I'm quite familiar with personal injury, and I did that a lot prior to taking on family law clients. And so I've maintained both parts of my practice, and they kind of work hand in hand because ironically enough, the family law rules do sometimes rely on the civil procedure rules. Mm-hmm. And so really knowing both has been a good compliment. And I find it, rewarding, and it's a nice change of pace for me to do. I could do some family law, and then I shift gears and go into the personal injury world. So it's been really good.
Okay, Darren. So since you're knowledgeable in this sphere, I get into a car accident, okay? Bad car accident, fairly bad. I break my arm.
Okay.
What do I do? What's my first step? I'm in the car, accident happens, bang! I'm injured. What happens?
All right, so there's a few things that happen, and we'll go into that. So there's the treatment options afterwards, and then also the lawsuit. But I think immediately what you need to focus on, if you've been in a car accident, it's like the immediate concerns. What do you do? So obviously you're in an accident, the vehicles are stopped, and if they're not stopped, try to get yourself in a safe situation if you're conscious and can do that. I mean, sometimes you're not, and the next thing you're going to want to do is check to see if anyone is injured, that being anybody in the vehicle with you. So if you're traveling with others, check on them and make sure that everyone in your immediate vicinity is taken care of. Once you've determined that and your vehicle's come to a complete stop, you're now hopefully at least conscious and oriented towards what has happened. You can take inventory of the vehicle, you can take inventory of the people. And you really want to focus at that point on just ensuring that, the situation around you is safe to exit the vehicle. So if you're able to exit the vehicle, the recommendation is to exit the vehicle and assess the damages there. Only if it's safe.
Right.
And if it's not safe, or if you deem it not safe, and I would urge you to always just be cautious.
Right, but how would someone deem something as unsafe?
If something's on fire, if you're walking, if you can see out your window visible, like another vehicle is caught on fire, or if you see oncoming traffic. So if you're on like the 401 or something, stay in your car, right? Because you're not going to walk out into more danger. Presumably cars around you will have stopped and people are trying to assist and get help for you.
Right.
But if you find yourself in that dangerous situation, stay in the vehicle.
Right.
But if you're in a more rural area, or if you're in a non-busy road and you deem it okay to get out and you can walk and you don't have any visible injuries to your legs or don't feel like you do, you should get out of the vehicle and assess the damages.
Okay.
After that, then you have to figure out, can you move the vehicle? Because sometimes if you're not in a serious car accident, you'll be able to move your vehicle and get it on the side of the road.
Okay.
And so that becomes important because you don't want to create another hazard for another vehicle that maybe not paying attention to hit the vehicle. You really want to make sure that the scene is safe and take care of that before you take any further steps or go talk to anybody or do anything. You want to make sure that that's taken care of. Once you've ascertain that, then, especially if there's nobody stopping to help, you're going to want to call the police, and they'll advise you on what the next steps are going to be. So whether that's, okay, it's not a serious accident, so then they'll direct you to go to the collision center. And so every jurisdiction will have a collision center, which is run by the police, and you go there to report the accident. Both drivers of the vehicles or multiple drivers are directed to go there. And the threshold for that is if there is more than $2,000 in damages, then the police will attend the scene. And if there's less than $2,000 in damages, then they'll direct you to go to the collision center.
Oh, okay. But how does someone ascertain what the value of the damages are? Is it just you just sort of eyeball it?
I mean, at the end of the day, you just look at your car. If it's crushed,
that's a pretty easy
thing.
Right.
I'm thinking more like a rear end accident.
Right.
It's like having a rear end accident where there aren't serious injuries and you've just tapped the fender of another vehicle, or you've tapped it. It's unlikely that those damages will be greater than $2,000. But,
sure.
Given the technology in today's cars, you break a headlight, it could cost more than $2,000. So who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
But the police will tell you. So if at worst case scenario, they'll come to the scene, but they'll come and direct you to go to the collision center. And oftentimes they'll ask if anybody's severely injured.
Right.
And if there's no severe injuries and the scene is relatively, if both cars can drive away, that's kind of another tell.
Okay.
If both cars are drivable, it's likely that they'll send you off to the collision center to...
Now, is it just a good rule of thumb to, if you're in some sort of accident where there's a modicum of severity, to contact the police? Yes.
Okay. I would say so. I think your default should be to call 911. And that gets into, our topic on, if you want to commence a lawsuit and if you want to, if you are injured, people avoid calling the ambulance or calling and going to the hospital after an accident. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, I'm fine, I'm just going to go home. But it's very important because head injuries aren't apparent right away. And so if you strike your head on the wheel, or if you strike your head on the window, or even if you just strike your head on the headrest, whiplash, concussion, head injuries are serious, and you can't necessarily tell right away. And so it's always best, what we recommend is always best to go to the hospital and get yourself checked out. I know it's a pain. Nobody likes waiting in the ER. Nobody wants to waste 4 hours, there. But generally speaking, after a car accident, if you advise them that you've been in one, you will get some sort of treatment or care, or somebody, at least you'll get an intake nurse to look at your eyes and make sure they're properly dilated and take a look at you and do an overall health check. And if they deem you non-urgent, then either it's up to you. You can go home and then maybe go up to the walk-in clinic or your family doctor for follow-up. Right. Just to be sure, because anytime you've been in a car accident, there is always a chance for a head injury. There's always a chance that you've hurt something that you can't necessarily feel because your body goes into shock.
Yeah, there's adrenaline pumping through you
so you're not necessarily sure. And that's why when you see a lot of people say, like, well, 2 days later, they're really sore after a car accident, but they didn't necessarily feel it.
Or they have these massive headaches all of a sudden,
Right, that they never had before or had never experienced to that severity.
Right.
That is an indicator that you may have struck your head unknowingly.
Right.
And so even the lightest topic, I mean, I was in a rear end, somebody hit me from behind, no damage to the vehicle, but my neck was sore after a couple of days. I did feel it.
Right.
And those are the things that happen when the forces of two vehicles collide like that.
Of course.
And they're heavy objects, you're buckled in, your body's not ready for that impact. So when your body is at rest and not ready for that impact, that's when you can see a lot of severe injury.
Right. Now, subsequent to an accident, is it wise for if it's safe to come out of the vehicle, everybody's sort of safe in the vehicle, or, you've ascertained that the injuries aren't severe, would you ever advise someone to step out of the vehicle and just take pictures of the damage of the car? Right.
And so once you're okay and it's safe and the vehicles are off the side of the road, at that point you want to start documenting. So that's the point in which you can decide, okay, I'm going to take pictures. I would recommend to do a 360 view of both vehicles or all of the vehicles involved in the accident to get good pictures of the road conditions that day. If it's icy, if not, try to get any type of evidence to depict the scene that day, because what's going to happen later are two things. You're going to be asked what your recollection was of that day weather-wise.
Right.
You're going to be asked what your recollection of the road conditions were. You're also going to be asked, at what speed you were traveling.
Right.
And so it's very important in that moment to try to capture those things as a memory. And the best, what do we always say about pictures? A picture's worth 1,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
Because the best part of a picture is you can go back to it and use that to refresh your memory. You say, oh, I don't know. Was it cloudy? Was it sunny?
Right.
Well, when you take that picture of the sky, it's a blue sky and sun. Or you take a picture and it's snowing out.
Mm-hmm.
That will tell you the conditions of that day without having to guess. And that becomes very important. Those details are so important later on. You want to make sure you document those efficiently and effectively, which brings me to there's a website, the FSCO, FSCO website. There is a worksheet on that website, which we'll put a link to that in the description, because it's a worksheet. I think it's about 3 pages. You can print it out, and you can work through the details of the accident. It tells you, it gives you examples of all the things you need to work out on the scene and right after an accident. I think that to me is very helpful because it makes you think about the things that you need to know going forward, especially when you're starting to deal with the accident benefits and when you're starting to deal with people asking you all the questions about that day. And even if you end up having to give a statement to the police that day, which I'll say, you should also be alert at the time of the accident to any foul play that has happened as a result of this accident, being, if you see the other driver get out of their vehicle and they're stumbling around,
right,
or if you think that driver was traveling at a rate of speed greater than 40 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, those are types of things you want to take mental note of and communicate that to the police officer.
Right.
And those are causes as well too of calling 911 immediately.
Right, so because there'd be a police report subsequent to the accident.
Right,
correct?
because what's going to happen is if you decide, okay, there is not sufficient damage here, but you watch this driver get out of their vehicle and they're visibly either intoxicated or they've taken some sort of drug or they're not with it, that's something very important for a police officer to get to the scene immediately to assess, because then they can act, right? Because there could be more things at play rather than just the accident itself, because there could be charges that are laid as a result, which again, if there are charges laid against the driver of the other vehicle, that helps your eventual case in a lawsuit later on if you end up wanting to commence a lawsuit and sue for your injuries. And so very important information gathering stage. I can't stress how important it is to gather that information at the scene of the accident, because when I do the intake interview with my client, I'm asking all of those questions, and it could be 6 months later.
Sure.
Because sometimes it takes that long to get to a lawyer, to get to a meeting, or you just put your mind to it 6 months later and you don't know. And so if I'm asking you 6 months later as the lawyer that's going to be acting for you, well, then maybe 12 more months later, a lawyer for the defense is going to be asking you the same questions. And if your story with me 6 months in is different than your story 18 months in, then we have a problem, right?
Yeah, there could be some difficult ramifications there.
Right. And so we'll get into that later, but I want to talk about accident benefits.
We'll talk accident benefits. Let's take a break first, then we'll jump into accident benefits. So we'll take a break, and then we'll come right back.
This episode of Off the Cuff is brought to you by Weaver Simmons LLP, Northern Ontario's largest full-service law firm with over 30 lawyers and 60 support staff. For over 90 years, the law firm of Weaver Simmons has proudly served the interests of Northern Ontario residents and has built its reputation based on exceptional services to its clients. For more information about the firm, please visit www.weaversimmons.com. The link is provided in the description below.
Welcome back. Now, before we get into the statutory accident benefits, there's the question that everybody asks, and frankly, I've asked a couple of times, is, we say you get into an accident, we'll exchange information. Deeran, what the hell information is there to exchange?
Notice how he said a couple times?
Just don't worry about it,
yeah,
kids. Don't worry about it.
I think there's been a few more, but anyway.
Don't worry about it, Kate.
All right. So what you do at the scene of the accident, there's two things that I want to mention. The first is exchange of information. It's this dreaded, like, I don't want to give you my info, especially if you've been the one that is the offending party. You're like, I don't want to tell you anything about me, because obviously it's like, well, that person's going to sue me.
Sure.
Exchange the information. You're going to get sued anyways. We'll find you. So give your insurance information is important. Obviously, in today's day and age, everyone has a smartphone generally. So you just give the person, let them take a picture of your insurance policy. And why that is important is because then they can submit that to their insurance company, because in the background of everything, insurance companies fight with each other about who's going to pay. And so if you don't provide it at the outset, they'll find it anyway. But they appreciate having all the information because it gives them the ability to discuss priority of payment.
Right.
And insurers, that's a big thing of what they do is they deal with priority of repayment. And so they're going to find the information, give it to them.
So that's just your insurance slip that you have with your ownership in your car that everybody should have in their car ready to go.
Yes. So that's your policy number,
right,
your vehicle registration number, your name. It has all your information on it. You don't really need to give them like a copy of your driver's license. If you're comfortable with the person and it's kind of an amicable scene, you can share contact information just, for future purposes. So that's something that's recommended. If you can talk to the other person, share your phone numbers. You don't have to become best friends. Obviously, it's just, it is what it is.
You don't have to, no?
No, it's not a requirement under the law. It should be, though.
Under the law. Okay.
But, yeah. I think that's important. Don't be combative on the scene. Even if you're the offending party, it's high emotions. We talk about in family law high emotions all the time, right?
Yeah, all the time.
But nothing is worse than getting into a car accident, knowing that maybe you're the one that caused the car accident, and then being combative on the scene. I've had a case where people got into a car accident and they're like yelling at each other at the scene of the accident. Like, that's not helpful. Like, don't do that.
Oh, it doesn't help resolution? No? It doesn't help the situation?
Shockingly, it doesn't help the situation, and you're going to get sued anyway, so what's the difference?
That's a good point. Now, we'll go back to statutory. Thanks for that, by the way. That was really helpful.
Oh, one more thing, though, on witnesses.
Sure, have at it.
Because at the scene, sometimes somebody will stop and be kind. In today's day and age, you hope. Doesn't always happen, though. But anyway, if some kind nurse stops and wants to help, get their contact information, too. Because that's going to help your lawyer later when they want to talk about what happened at the scene. They'll have an independent third-party witness. And the police will appreciate that, too, because they mark that person's name down on their police report.
Sure.
Especially if that person is the one that called the police or if that person witnessed the actual accident. Mm-hmm. So let's say if somebody ran a red light and this person was waiting at the red light and they saw the whole thing happen. Huge. Very important. If they offer their assistance, don't turn them away. Right. Because they are vital pieces of evidence, especially if liability becomes a concern. Like in that same example I just gave you, let's say the offending party says, well, no, the light was green. But you have this innocent bystander who was watching the whole thing to say, actually, hold the phone. That light was red, and that person ran right through it and smashed into the car. So
witnesses are vital.
Vital information. So anyway, that's just my little tidbits on the scene. Talk to the people there. Get their contact information. Share your contact information with the other party that's been in the accident. Be kind to others. It's a very emotionally charged scene. It doesn't need to escalate. The more it escalates, the worse it gets for everyone, and it doesn't end up resolving anything. So that's what I would say. Well,
thanks for that. Now we'll go back to statutory accident benefits. So first question, what are statutory accident benefits?
All right. So in a nutshell, we call them in our world, we call them SABs, but nobody calls them that. Really, you just hear them called accident benefits. And so every insurance policy comes with basic accident benefits under them. And so your basic accident benefits are income replacement benefits. So if you've been injured in a car accident, your insurance company will pay you a weekly benefit to recover some income loss just to help you get through until you can go back to work. Then also you have home care and home maintenance benefits that are available to you, medical and rehabilitation benefits. So that's the big one. So that's where you have access to physiotherapy treatment, chiropractic treatment, massage therapy, all your medical benefits, psych therapy too. So if it's an accident that has caused you like anxiety driving, which happens a lot. So if you're in a serious collision, a lot of people often have to go to rehabilitation for getting back behind the wheel. And so accident benefits will help pay for that. And so it's very important that you get these applications rolling, and I'll get into that in a minute. But then also your accident benefits include a death and funeral benefit. So unfortunately, if somebody does pass away in a car accident, there are death benefits available, and also funeral expenses can be paid by the accident benefit insurer. So I know that a lot of people often worry about that. If the loved one has passed away, funeral expenses are not cheap.
No.
And
right.
you can turn, at least for a little bit, you can turn to the insurance company that will pay some of it, up to a maximum. And so you want to look at those as a first step after an accident. And those are benefits paid by your insurer.
By your insurer.
Your insurer.
So how do you know what your benefits are? Are they in your insurance policy?
Right. And so I would encourage everybody that's listening or watching, take out your insurance policy and go look at it. See what you have.
Because I think very seldom do people actually read.
I don't think anybody reads
the policies. Yeah,
I don't even read it half the time,
right.
and I should.
Yeah.
But I know what I'm buying because this is the work that we do. But
sure,
the insurance policy itself will tell you exactly what benefits you buy, and this becomes important because a lot of people shop for insurance either online or through brokers, and it's very difficult sometimes to understand what is being provided to you, because what do you look for in an insurance policy? What is like the thing that you want in an insurance policy?
I'll be frank here, the cheapest one possible.
And I think you are the same as 99% of people shopping for auto insurance.
Yeah.
So of course you want the cheapest premium, but as soon as you see, okay, I've got three companies and that's the cheapest premium, you're just probably going to sign up for that.
I think more often than not that happens,
right?
yes.
So, but that doesn't tell you what's in the policy itself. And so your standard auto policy will tell you exactly what accident benefits you have. And here's the little secret that people don't know about. Ready?
Let's hear it.
You can enhance your accident benefits optionally, so you can pay for more.
Right.
And so what I'll do is I'll get into the base limits,
sure.
and then I'll tell you what is available to you by way of enhancement. Income replacement benefits start at $400 a week. Could you live off $400 a week?
No.
Right. So you have the option under your insurance policy to increase that. There are multiple stages,
okay.
$400, $600, $800, and $1,000 a week. Of course, your premium starts to go up as you want these enhanced benefits, but much better to be in a position where you're getting $1,000 a week from your insurance company instead of $400 a week from your insurance company. So another important thing to note is that it's 70% of your gross income. So they calculate, there's a formulaic calculation of how much you're going to get. And so 400 is the max.
Right.
But sometimes if 70% of your gross income is only $200 a week, well, they're only going to pay you $200 a week. So you have to assess. That's why you assess your benefits based on your income level, of course. And if it doesn't make sense for your income level to buy those enhanced benefits, because you would never be able to take advantage of them if you don't make that enough money, right?
Those income replacement benefits, are they taxable?
No, they're not, because the reasoning is that you pay your insurance premium with after-tax dollars.
Right.
So you're going to get the full value of the benefit back to you. And so, you're not going to be paying income tax on after-tax dollars. So that's built right into the legislation where you don't have to worry about that.
Good stuff. Now, these attended care applications or these income replacement benefit, like, how does one start receiving that money? Is just the insurance company just going to give you money, or do you have to file applications or fill out applications?
So what happens mechanically is that you get into a car accident, and then within the 24 hours after your car accident, the first thing you should be doing is calling your own insurance company, because like I said, as the accident benefits are paid by your own insurer. So you call your insurance company, and then what happens, they send you an application package in the mail. And
they send the forms.
They send you the forms. You fill out the application forms, and then embedded in those forms are things that you have to do. So, for example, you'll fill out your application for accident benefits, ask you all the information about yourself, the details, the injuries, self-reported injuries, and then your employer and all of that kind of information. Then there's another form that you fill out with respect to your employer. And so that's if you're applying for income replacement benefits, so then this employment form, you have to take that to your employer and they fill that out for you.
Okay.
And so they'll fill out the majority of that. And then there's another form, which is the most important one, which is your disability certificate. And that is filled out by your family doctor, or you could take it to a walk-in clinic if you don't have a family doctor. But that form is very crucial. And so I would, as listeners and viewers, encourage you, if you do get into a car accident, nothing is more important than OCF 3, it's called. Make sure you give a really good summary and a good history to your doctor or whoever is filling that form out for you, because that is how your benefits application is adjudicated. They look at that disability certificate and they will adjudicate your application on that basis. So very critical that you get that right.
Right.
And so you want to make sure that all the information is accurate, and that goes back to, making sure that all the scene information and all the information that you've collected up to date is accurate, because then when you fill out that form and you go report to your doctor has the most current, up-to-date information that he or she needs to submit that directly to the insurer. And actually, a small little tidbit of information is that sometimes doctors will charge you to fill that out. The insurance company will reimburse them.
Okay.
So that's a lot of people don't know that, and a lot of people say, I don't want to pay the doctor $40 or whatever it is. But the insurance company does reimburse that expense.
Now, it would be fairly overwhelming. If someone got into, let's say, a rather serious accident, and they're getting this in the mail, and then they're looking at all these forms, and I'm sure they're not just, simple forms. So what do you suggest, or what do you recommend to people who are having difficulty with these forms?
Right. And so law offices can help with those. So personal injury lawyers have clerks who are dedicated specifically to accident benefits only. And so what happens is, if you've been in a car accident, and even if you don't necessarily want to commence a lawsuit, but you want to explore your options,
sure,
these statutory accident benefit applications are often done in tandem with the lawsuit.
Right.
But what happens is the accident benefits applications start first because those are immediate concerns. And then the lawsuit happens later because that's not really an immediate thing that you need to worry about. And so accident benefit clerks at law offices are trained to assist people with filling out those forms. And what's really a nice benefit to that is typically that work that you hire those clerks to do, and if you hire a personal injury lawyer or law office to do that, that kind of work is also on a contingency basis. Usually if it's just an accident benefits claim, it's on a lesser contingency basis than what a personal injury file would be. And for those of you who don't understand what I'm saying about contingency, that means that if you get into an accident and you consult a law office, you don't pay fees up front, generally speaking. What you will do is you'll sign what's called a contingency fee agreement, and you end up paying out of your eventual hopeful settlement. And so you'll pay your legal fees on a percentage basis of gross recovery. So if for your accident benefits file, if that's all you're doing and you don't want to commence a lawsuit, your fees might be 15% of the recovery on that file, and then you would end up paying the law firm out of any eventual settlement you get out of your accident benefits, the whole pot of money that's available to you if you end up settling that. And then if you get into the litigation part of it, if you want to commence a lawsuit, generally speaking, your fees are 30% of gross recovery, and you pay your fee on whatever eventual settlement there is. So that's the fee structure. That's if you hire a lawyer, you can talk to them more about. That's not really what today's purpose is, but in any event, law offices can help you with those application forms. And the really nice part about that is the clerks will liaise with all the professionals needed to fill out those forms for you.
That's nice, because it can be overwhelming for someone.
Totally. And especially if you're in a serious accident, if you've broken an arm like you did. Or if you've hit your head and you're having trouble concentrating and focusing, and there's lots of things that go into it. So if you're having trouble with that, my recommendation would be to seek out help. And the best place to get help is a law office to help you fill those forms out. And personal injury lawyers do that all the time.
Right.
So that is an option available to you. I'm sure our listeners and viewers probably didn't know that about law offices, that you don't just go to us or come to us to sue. There is this element of the personal injury world that is handled by our clerks who do an amazing job at it. And really, you don't really ever meet with the lawyer until you decide if you do want to sue, which it comes later, again, like I said, but not right away.
Now, in the application for statutory accident benefits, there's an application for the damage to my car? Do I have to sue for that? What do I do then?
So property damage is kind of its own beast.
Okay.
You don't really deal with that in the accident benefit world.
Sure.
So again, the property damage will be paid by your insurer.
Okay.
And why it's important to share the information with the other parties is if it's an at-fault accident and you're not at fault, your insurance company will actually in the background go chase the offending party's insurance company to reimburse them for the payout on your car. So that's the mechanics of why it matters.
Right.
But from your perspective as the consumer, it doesn't really matter. Your insurance company will pay your property damage out, and then you move on and get yourself a new car or what have you. But the tricky thing that insurers don't tell you is that if you've just bought a new car and you're probably 2 years into a loan, the property damage on that vehicle, the payout, might not even cover your loan.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, you're not able to sue the insurance company for that. You have to just work with them and negotiate the best resolution that you can.
There's some legwork with your own insurance company at times.
Yeah. And that, lawyers don't usually get involved in that. So,
Okay.
that's not something I would recommend you go see a lawyer for.
Sure.
Because they're not going to help you. The more they're going to charge you more than you'd probably recover as the negotiation benefit. You're better off to just try to negotiate the best result with your own insurer. And oftentimes, if you get a reasonably competent and helpful adjuster, you'll get there with them. You just have to push the limit. My advice would be just to push the envelope.
Right.
Don't just take the first number they give you, because there's always wiggle room. We all know that. Negotiations always start with the lowest number, and you just work it up from there. So that's my advice. You don't need a lawyer for that. I think most people can handle that on their own, and I would just recommend doing that. But going back to the benefits, I did want to get into a little bit more about what else is available.
Yeah, have at it.
And so the medical rehab component, the max limit is $65,000 for treatment. Okay. So that's
a fairly significant number.
Yep. That's your basic amount. Mm-hmm. And what happens is you can enhance that up to $1 million in medical rehab benefits for non-catastrophic injuries. So again, like I said about those optional accident benefits, you can go buy more insurance. You can always buy more insurance.
Right. Just that your premiums will be more
premiums are going to go up. So that's your medical rehab benefits. And then also catastrophic limits you can increase as well. So right now...
And what does that mean, catastrophic?
Right, thanks, because that's important too. Catastrophic is loss of limb, like amputation, or
like the literal sense of catastrophic. These
exactly.
very, very serious injuries.
So if there's a loss of limb or there's a brain injury, you have to apply to the accident benefit insurer for the catastrophic designation. And once you get the catastrophic designation, and there are time limits in which you should do that. So I'm not really going to get into like the mechanics of that, because it's complicated and every case is different. But if you're in that situation and you have a severe trauma to your head, or you lose a limb, or you're in rehab for a brain injury, those are things that you really should consider contacting a personal injury lawyer about, because at that point you're pretty far in, and you should get professional help. And the best place to get professional help is through a personal injury office. So there are very specific limits. There are timelines. There are specific legal tests to determine whether or not you meet the catastrophic injury guidelines. So get help, really. Right. And if you're in that situation, you probably are going to need the advice from our previous episodes about powers of attorney and all that kind of stuff. So it's all going to be tied in together, because those POAs might have to be making those health decisions for you in the moment, especially if you've been in that serious of a car accident and an injury. Right. So very important to keep your affairs in order, and very important to seek out the appropriate professional advice when you're in that situation. So I always encourage people to enhance their medical rehab benefits. You don't have to go right up to $1 million. There are tiers within that. The next tier is $130,000, so you can double it. I would always recommend at least doing that, because nowadays it doesn't take long to exhaust $65,000 of like physiotherapy treatment.
Sure.
And especially if you need it, or, you know, just getting into a concussion clinic, you know, it's like $3,000 to get in the door. And so you're going to be spending money. Of course, the insurer is going to be paying
Right.
it. But when you run out and you still need treatment, there's nothing left.
Right.
And then you're stuck out of pocket, right? And that out of pocket expense I will talk about in the lawsuit.
Yeah.
So when we talk about bringing an action, you can recover your out of pocket expenses in the lawsuit. So those are med rehab benefits. I already talked a little bit about the death and funeral benefits. Those can be enhanced too.
Right.
So you can get more for your spouse and your dependents, and then also the funeral expenses.
Mm-hmm.
You can enhance those. You can get more protection that way. And it's always just worth a conversation with your broker, or honestly, just call up the insurer and say, what is available to me? My policy is about to renew.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about adding some coverage. What can I get?
Sure.
And how much is it going to cost me? Because
that's fundamentally what people are going to be looking at. Yeah.
You're going to look at. But if you can spend $20 extra a year or $50 a year, and you enhance yourself a little bit, you give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, gives you that peace of mind, which is what insurance is, right?
Yeah.
And so on that note, you should also review your insurance policy for what's called the family endorsement. And I'm not going to get into this too much, but it's important. It's called the OPCF 44R. And this protects you when you're in an accident with somebody who has no insurance or underinsured, which means that they're only carrying low limit insurance, like collision insurance, and they don't have the appropriate policy limits for liability. It's important to have your insurance policy cover that, because the statutory minimum that an insurer has to pay is $200,000.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
if your injury exceeds that, if your injuries and the lawsuit that you eventually commence, the damages exceed 200, and you don't have this family endorsement
Sure.
on your policy, and the other party is uninsured or has little insurance, like just the collision stuff, you might be stuck needing $500,000 worth of treatment on a going forward basis, and only access to 200. So it's very important to ensure that you have that on your auto policies, and everybody should go look. All of yours listeners, go look at your policy and make sure you have that endorsement on there, because I don't believe it costs too much extra to have. And I think at this point, most Ontario auto policies have it baked in to it, but you should just double check, because you might be on an older policy. You might be on something that's grandfathered in, and you don't necessarily have that endorsement, and it might be time to update your policy. So I think it's probably about time we take a break.
Let's take a break. We'll come
get
back.
back into it.
This episode of Off the Cuff is brought to you by Weaver Simmons LLP, Northern Ontario's largest full-service law firm with over 30 lawyers and 60 support staff. For over 90 years, the law firm of Weaver Simmons has proudly served the interests of Northern Ontario residents and has built its reputation based on exceptional services to its clients. For more information about the firm, please visit www.weaversimmons.com. The link is provided in the description below.
Welcome back. Now, to sort of summarize a bit, frankly, I'll say that I've learned quite a bit today, because, I broke my arm in this scenario, but I've never been in a car accident. So frankly, I don't know about the scene, what to do on the day of the accident, right after the accident, the tidbits about make sure everything's safe, make sure everybody's safe in the car, and then contact your insurance company, the collision center. All that information I don't think is known by the general public. And frankly, I didn't know much of that. So I appreciate that. And then the statutory accident benefits, we learned about it in law school a little bit, but when to get the meat of the information from someone who practices in the field, frankly, is great. And I'll say, for myself as a learning experience, I think for the viewers and listeners, it was a phenomenal bit of information, because that's all pre-lawsuit. Everybody thinks you get into an accident, you got to sue, but there's a lot that goes on prior to even the commencement of a lawsuit, and a lot of things you can do to help yourself and your family members before even thinking about these potential lawsuits. So thanks for that, Darren.
And it ties into everything we've been talking about up to date. I think it gives, the flavor of, you do have to have your affairs in order, because sometimes those decisions are going to need to be made for you. And if you get into an accident, the whole goal of this was to just share what the general public may not know.
Right.
And so that now takes us to what we're going to talk about next time. And hopefully people have stayed tuned till now so you can find out what we're going to talk about next time. The actual lawsuit, because we've alluded to that a lot. Of course, it's inevitable that we have to allude to it throughout the process, but that doesn't mean that they're not one and together. You can just deal with your accident benefits and never commence a lawsuit. That's fine. But you can also sit back, evaluate if you do want to commence a lawsuit, and that's what we're going to talk about next time. So I want to thank you guys for listening today. I'm Darren Chohan.
I'm Matt Butler.
See you next time.
See you next time.